back to the future here. So we're going to talk about proposals, contracts, budgets today. So the proposals a little bit, and we shared ahead of time the Center for Shared Prosperity proposal. I'm curious how many people got to glance at that or skim that.
Yeah, it the past 9 pages.
A little bit, yeah. Anybody else look at it at all?
Yeah, 30.
Okay, we'll talk about it today. Don't worry. That was not homework.
I had the chance.
But the way I want to start is actually something that we're going to do together, which is when you write a proposal and you share it with a funder. We know the ultimate goal, which is you want them to say yes. That's the critical goal. But what are the things we're trying to communicate in the proposal? What is it that we're trying to say when we give them the proposal? So I'll take notes right on the slide, but anybody, any ideas? What are we trying to communicate to the person reading it?
What we want to accomplish.
What we want to accomplish, sure, it's kind of the what. What did you say, Abdulaziz?
Organization history.
Organization.
History.
So would that be like vision and mission?
History, vision, mission. Anybody else? What are we trying to communicate to people?
The people.
The people?
I try to do the purpose. What is the purpose of this, of me asking you for money?
Yep.
That's what I think about.
The specific outcomes.
Mhm.
The financial health of an organization.
Does that include metric?
Metrics. So your list is exactly what somebody would come up with, I think, on this kind of thing. It's a fine list, but I'm going to suggest thinking a little bit differently about what you're trying to accomplish. This may seem cynical. It's not cynical, I promise. Let me duplicate this slide so I don't lose it. Control, duplicate.
I have a question. What do you mean when you say metrics? I don't know what that means. I don't know what you're saying about that.
Abdulaziz, do you want to talk about what you meant, or do you want me to?
Metrics, sometimes they ask.
How you're going to measure? Is it like how you're going to measure what's going on?
Yes, that's it. That's one.
Okay,
another
okay.
kind of metric, another word of metric that they use.
Fast.
Evaluation, is that it? How we're going to evaluate the project?
Exactly.
Okay.
Metrics
Okay.
are simply one version of evaluation. That's right.
Okay, evaluate.
It depends with the foundation. Some of them they use metric, evaluation, and measure. So,
Okay,
Some of them use goals. They have all kinds of ridiculous words. Goals, measures, metrics, MEL plans, MEL documents. You name it.
that one I don't know.
Now, I'm going to ask you to think differently. I duplicated the slide. We're not going to lose anything. Actually, let me duplicate it again because I changed it. So let's duplicate it again. And I'm going to ask you to think differently. If you do what you've written here, you're going to write a proposal just like the proposal everybody writes to the foundations. And their eyes glaze over. And the reason is all the proposals are this way. What they really care about, I'm going to write now, okay? This is like the dark underbelly, what they actually care about. It isn't the what that they care about so much as the idea of this is urgent and not done. They
What?
want to get instant understanding that whatever the need is absolutely urgent. It has to be done now. They can't wait till next year. They can't just kick this till next year. And it's not being done right now.
That
okay.
makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Because of a proposal I just wrote, we started off with the need. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing is organization, history, vision, mission. They don't want to know about you as an organization. They want to know something else. They want to know that you, the author, I have total confidence in my organization. They're not going to judge your organization. They're going to judge whether they feel like you're confident that you can do the job. So they want the sense that you got this. You totally have this if they give you the money. The other thing they want to do is, yeah, outcomes matter. But actually what they want to do is this. Here is why I, the program officer, will be able to boast to my friends. They want to fund something that makes them look good in front of their board of trustees and gives them something to boast about to their friends who are other program officers. So the other program officers go, well, I wish I had funded that. And that's good. So they want to know what's so cool and invigorating about your program that they're going to be able to collect points with it in their social circle. I know that sounds cynical.
It's true.
Completely true.
I love this. Great.
Okay. So you got to think about that. What is going to make them able to boast to their friends that they are the ones who funded this? Oops. It's back. Okay. Sorry, the screen died. It's back. And then there's another part that actually goes with outcomes and evaluation in a way. Anytime you tell a foundation, this is new, nobody's done this, we're going to be the first people doing this, they're going to have red alarm bells go off in their head going, yeah, no, that's probably not true. That means these people have the conceit of thinking they're doing this for the first time, and they haven't done any research to see what's being done around the world already. So that's not what they want. What they want is for you to contextualize this in what's being done elsewhere. The best proposal in that sense, the best proposal in this last sense is the one that says, here's this amazing program at University of Rochester that takes first-generation immigrants and gives them a college education. Here's this awesome program at San Diego. We go and take the best of those two existing programs that have a proven track record. We know they work. We're going to add this other secret sauce that we know about, and that's what we're doing in Pittsburgh. This means when you do this well, you come across as not conceited. You come across as somebody who doesn't think they're inventing the world. And you come across as what you might think of as kind of like a scholar, somebody who's studied what's been done somewhere else. And you're referencing a newspaper article or an article or a publication by somebody else. And they're seeing, wow, you did your homework. You totally studied what's worked well and you're building off of it. And that greatly diminishes to them the risk of doing it. Because they are thinking, well, they did parts of this in San Diego already. So surely this is a good idea. I don't have to judge it because it's been judged already. And then the last part, and again, this is kind of sounds cynical, is they want to feel like you know, the people, the proposers are highly detail oriented. The thing, oh, come on. The thing that foundations do not fund is an ideas person. Somebody that has a good generic idea and doesn't have the details. So they need to see in the proposal that, oh my God, you've thought about the details of this. You have 5 action areas listed out and a little organizational structure. And you have milestones every 3 months that you're going to meet. My God, you've actually planned this out.
All right, wait a minute, go back. The proposals are highly detailed orientated. What did you say after that? There were 3 things I think you said.
Yeah, the proposers, the authors.
Right,
They want
I
to
know.
know, the person who wrote this is basically like obsessive compulsive. The way you're going to prove that you're that way is by having detail in the proposal, like fine-grained detail. Like, here are 5 project activities we're going to be doing. And here's a calendar that shows every 2 months we have a milestone we're going to be hitting. That just shows them that you've thought about the little nitty-gritty details of executing the project. Because when they see a vague idea, even if it's a good idea, they're not going to fund it. They're just gonna give you advice and tell you how you have to give it more detail.
Okay,
So this is like, you guys, your list is good. This list is correct, technically, but you can do all that and not emotionally engage the reader. You can do all that and not make them feel like there's an urgency to funding you right now, that they're going to be proud of funding you, and this is going to look good for their record. So you need to put this in this other language or in this other kind of thinking in your head, like that.
okay, okay, let me ask the question. This is an example. Like right now, I just heard this morning on the news that they're removing $95 from everybody's SNAP allotment.
Crazy.
Why?
Okay, oh yeah. Everybody, they're taking back the pandemic money, and they somehow calculated it at $95. So everybody is going to get a reduction of $95, including senior citizens.
Hmm.
So when we talk about feeding people in our community, that makes the urgency, right, Ela? And
Yeah.
the detail is there's a reduction in the SNAP allotment. So what we're doing is of the utmost importance to maintain a food justice balance in our communities.
What if you're writing a proposal around that? Yes,
No,
the
but
fact that they're reducing.
I
But
think
if you
I'm
were,
going to. Yes.
let's imagine that you were. If you were writing a proposal around that, the reduction in SNAP benefit, the dollar figure, and then using that to estimate total loss of buying power across senior citizens, for example, in Pittsburgh. So multiplying by total number of senior citizens that are close to the poverty line in Pittsburgh times that amount of money, that would all help you with urgency. The detail isn't that number. The detail is what you're going to do about it. It's being able to, in a fine-grained way, describe
Okay.
what you're planning to do about it.
Okay.
So for example, the detail could be to say that amount of money, it corresponds to this many healthy calories of intake per week per senior citizen for marginalized communities in Pittsburgh. And we're able to compensate for that by creating this food program that creates just that many calories per person using these 4, outlets and these co-ops. But if you filled in all those numbers, then people would look at that and be really impressed. Wow, you're figuring out exactly how much nutritional harm happens from that much reduction in SNAP, and you have a plan for compensating for that much nutritional harm. Does that make sense, Mariana?
That makes okay. Okay, yeah, I got it.
They're numbers people. All these program officers, they
Okay.
all play with numbers all day long. So when you use numbers on them, they can read that language. They understand it.
Okay.
And you take something and multiply the number of senior citizens and multiply by calories, they can understand numbers like that.
Okay. I got it.
So this is now this is all in that same Google Drive for you all, and we can reshare with you. But this is there for you to be able to look at when you write proposals. Now I pick apart the Center for Shared Prosperity proposal in the next few slides, just to give you a sense of the sections in that proposal and how they help with some of this stuff. This boasting, this one I highlighted. One of the best ways this happens is by showing that what you're doing is in some interesting way revolutionary. Anytime you do something that is what they think of as a band-aid, they'll think that that's small thinking. They'll say, well, you're kind of solving a problem right now, but in a way that next year the same problem's there, it needs to be solved the same way. When you say, we're going to create a power and advocacy program and train marginalized populations to advocate for a position of power, they go, ooh, you're changing the game. I like that. They like game changing. They like it when you rewrite the rules of the game. So that's always something to think about, is how is what you're doing risky in a sense, not high risk, revolutionary. That's what I'm trying to look for. That's the word I'm looking for. How are you rewriting the rules or kicking against the existing rules in some way? Because that's what they want to boast about, is that they had the foresight and vision to fund this really cool thing that was revolutionary in some way. So one of the sections I always put in my proposal is the executive summary.
Yes.
Only a page or two, never longer than 2 pages. It has to deal with the why. Why are we bothering with this? How are we going to do it in very high level language? And then the most important part, hope. By the time you finish reading the executive summary, there should be hope. It should be positive and exciting and optimistic. When you fund this, we are going to be able to accomplish this, this, and this. The reason the hope matters is because you leave them with an emotionally positive feeling at the end of the executive summary. So they have a feel-good association with your program. Just like when you're telling your loved one something critical, you sandwich it with good stuff on both sides, right? You got to end with the good. If you just leave them with critical, they're less motivated to actually act on what you're complaining about. Therapy 101. So, executive summary. One major warning, a lot of program officers, this is the only part they'll actually read. And by read, I mean word for word read. The rest of the proposal, they might flip through and look at the figures and read the last paragraph or a couple of sentences here and there. But honest to God, they might not read the rest line by line. So figures and graphs and charts and lists of milestones are much better in the rest. But this one part, usually you can get people to read the first 2 pages. It's hard. I'm doing PhD admissions right now. I've read hundreds of admissions applications. It's painfully long, hundreds of hours of work. But when you're reading the statements of purpose, you read the first couple of paragraphs.
Yeah.
If they don't hook you,
Yeah.
you're toast. You're done. You just can't keep going because you don't have the energy, because you're reading hundreds of them. So they have to have a powerful couple of paragraphs at the beginning, otherwise you're done. One of the most powerful ways to do it is storytelling. You can't just say there's this need. You have a heck of a hook, Mamayana, if you don't start with the fact that SNAP benefits are going down, but you start with the fact that across my street lives Julia Driscoll. And Julia Driscoll has exactly what she needs from the SNAP benefits to eat 2 meals a day, and she's already underweight, and this is what's happening to her. And then you say what's happening. Just telling some kind of story reels them in and changes it from kind of an abstraction to thinking about real human beings.
Okay.
So that's kind of why when I talk about need in general and the bigger section of the proposal, there's 3 things you're doing with need. One, you're telling a story or two to show them kind of the fidelity of what's happening on the ground. 2, you're using data to show them the scope of it. If I can tell a story about one person, then I can use data to say, look how big this problem is, or look how awesome the opportunity is. And then scholarship gets to that other thing I was saying, which is research. You quote a couple of pieces of research, like in Center for Shared Prosperity's proposal, I quoted some research on, I think, wealth inequality around universities. Because then I'm showing that I've done my homework. I've studied that this is a real problem. And I can reference articles that say that. And that just shows them that you have a kind of seriousness and a willingness to accept information from the outside, and they like to see that. That's the need. And it's interesting, right? You're moving their heart and their brain. The stories are pulling at their heartstrings. The data and the scholarship is making their brain feel good about you. This must seem like psychology instead of perfect way.
So what is the
And then
scholarship? What's the scholarship? You had 3 things for the need.
Yeah.
Go back.
Scholarship is that you've done your research.
Okay.
Like
Oh,
you
okay.
point to an article that says people need at least this many calories. And when you have this much of a deficit, then it affects your quality of life, it affects your life expectancy, it affects your ability to work on the job, all these ways. You just point to that article and you say, this has been reported in many medical journals already. We know this is a problem. So scholarship is you're bringing in outside information to show that you don't think you're the expert of the world, but you're willing to reach out and get the expertise. Are you all, is your screen out in Zoom blinking, like turning black all the time or no?
No.
Okay, so that's just on our side.
Yeah.
Our screen is going haywire. I'm gonna try plugging in the plug on the back end of the TV hardware. So sad, you can have a brand new television, everything fail on it all the time. I really don't like that. Okay, see if it stops doing it now or not. No. That's so annoying. Sorry, our screen keeps going black. That's not the show I'm using, I guess. Okay, next one. When you're describing your solution, and we talked about this already, but be really organized. Talk about how you're doing things that are long lasting. And then reference other people in a really generous way. Like say, I really love what they did here. And even if it's right here in Pittsburgh, you know, here, I love what happened at the Homeless Children's Village when they did this thing. So I'm copying that. Or I love what happened here in Boston this way, and I'm inspired by that. Inspiration of other successes and inventions, people just love that because they say, wow, you're going to learn from everybody else. That's fantastic. That's pretty straightforward, I think. Plan, be really detailed. I always number some activities. So I'll make like a list of 3 or 4 activities. You know, in high school, they taught us when you write an essay to have like 3 points in your essay. I like to have like 3 activities in every proposal. So it says there's 3 major activities this proposal is going to have, major work parts, part 1, part 2, part 3. Because a number like 3 or 4, people can keep them all in their head at the same time. If you had 7 activities, it's too much. 7 is too much, it's too complicated. Simplify. And then for the timeline, if you're asking for money for like a year, there should be at least quarterly milestones. It's where you can just have a little chart and it says quarter 1, we're going to get this stuff done. Quarter 2, this stuff's going to happen. Quarter 3, this stuff's going to be done. Just in words. But that shows them you've thought about how to break down from the whole year to something smaller. Again, it's only 3 or 4. Again, that's the magic number. It's like 3 or 4. It's not like 8 or 10 milestone points. This is amazing.
Is that white thing?
I think it's the white connector.
Yeah, it's the one
I don't know.
I
I
have.
mean, we have to change all of one at a time, each piece.
Yeah.
I don't have replacements for anything. It's either this connector, or the TV.
At least it doesn't change our computer.
Let's try,
screen, so
let's try
like we're not,
flipping it.
they're not affected.
No, they're not affected.
Yeah.
Let's just try flipping it, see if it helps any. It is frustrating, but when you have a chance, Marlene, let's order another one. of these
Yes.
and these, and then we can flip and flop and see. And then the last section is this thing you guys talked about: measurement, metric, evaluation. Everybody wants to see that you've thought about that in some way. How are you going to measure things? I'm going to switch over now and look at the Center for Shared Prosperity proposal to show you the way I do measures, because I want to show you a really important things about measures. A lot of foundations try and make the metrics and measurement these quantitative things. It's as bad as like No School Left Behind and Race to the Top. Because then it forces you to be driven by artificial sets of numbers that are meaningless. So I hate numbers. I absolutely despise them. The foundations make you do them. And if you do stretch numbers, if you say I'm going to reach like 500 senior citizens in the first 6 months, you set yourself up for a disaster because then you're stressed out if you get the 500 or not. So I never create a stretch goal. It's too dangerous. It's too like, it makes life difficult to live. That's not fair. It's unnecessary. So if I look at this proposal, the Center for Shared Prosperity proposal, you know, it's got an executive summary, and then it's kind of a whole plan, but then it has goals and measures at the bottom. I'm going to go all the way to the goals and measures and show you the way we did goals and measures, trying not to overreach and not to go kind of ridiculous. So for instance, we were doing this thing in like December. We said by July, have a community committee. I'm sorry, appoint the launch committee by July, constituted by December. We gave ourselves a whole year. It didn't take a year. We had it running in 4 months. But you give yourself extra time so that you can easily meet that goal with that measure. And you see the measurement here doesn't say how many people are in C3.
Yeah.
It just, in as vague a sense as possible, describes the thing I really want to have happen, not some side effect in terms of numbers. This one, I wanted to make sure there's inputs into it. So I want public meetings, surveys, engagement with local organizations, etc. Having the etc. in there gives me like an ouch. So it doesn't have to be exactly what I listed. And I want engagement every month. Great. Again, making it kind of easy to do. Here's another one. Procedures are in place for everybody to get paid a meaningful honorarium, right? The goal is equity, financial equity. The measure isn't numerical. It's just saying we've done our business. We've gotten the systems in place. There's some places where I did do numerical stuff, like there's at least one news story every month. There's at least 6 CMU staff getting involved. I tried to keep the numbers small enough that it's not going to be like a distraction from the work because it's easy to do, not hard to do. So all of them are that way. All of them are an attempt to make the goals and measures not a distraction on what we're actually going to do. And that's just something I encourage. And feel free to look at these in your time. These are all in the drive, and Marlene sent you the proposal as a whole. But they're examples. It's a useful example for you because this is something that Heinz funded. So it's an example of something that has the level of detail that they were willing to fund.
Were they initially wanting more numbers represented within the goals and measures?
I told them I'm not putting lots of numbers in the goals and measures because that distracts from the work. I actually told them that. And again, if you show backbone to the funder, it's actually like anything in life, right? The more backbone you show, the more respect you are given.
Yep.
The more you accede to their wishes, the less respect they afford you because they decide they can tell you.
Yeah.
They decide you want to be told what to do. They have to decide that you're not interested in being told what to do. You're willing to be the leader.
Yeah.
Then they'll give you that or do that. But anyway, I just wanted you to see these examples because they're not like this one. Faculty appointment. By December 2020, we presented a proposal for expanding the definition of impact in tenure. I've been doing that. That's not measurable in a very explicit way. I've been talking to all the deans and all the provosts and all the chairs. So I've done it. It doesn't say the tenure requirements have changed officially at the university. Because I said that, I'm setting myself for failure. Because that could be like a faculty senate process that takes 5 years to get through faculty votes and approved. So you can't say the thing that you set yourself up for failure on. That's just not useful. This is amazing, the amount of link you were getting. It's just truly amazing. So that's very brief. I wanted to have plenty of time to do budgets and contracts too. But I think what you all asked for today was to really kind of think a little bit about, talk a little bit about proposals. I want to pause here so we can have a conversation about this. Whether this is useful, does some of this resonate with what you do, or do you disagree with some of it, or do you have other techniques and strategies that you like? So just opening the floor up now. And Marlene, you too, you've been in this world on all sides.
I'm always amazed with the language and how you, like you said, you actually make sure you don't include some of those things and box yourself into that because it limits you for what you're able to do and sort of restricts you from some of the goals that you are really looking to meet, but not right now, maybe years down the line.
One of the things about foundations is that they're very hierarchical, except for a few like New Sun Rising and Poise. But the big ones are very hierarchical and stressful. And they constantly, as program officers, need to have good news to give their head and for their head to give to the board of trustees. And the board meetings are super stressful for them. And
Wow.
I know this from personal experience. I've gone to the board meetings. I am a trustee for one of them. And there are not nice people on the trustees.
Wow.
Not nice people. And the program officer comes to them and tells an idea, and they say nasty things back, like you're thinking too small. This is uninteresting, you're thinking too small. Go think of better ideas.
Wait a minute. Now I wanna say this. When I went to the people who were doing my reimbursement grant, and I went to them and told them that I wanted to buy this $70,000 piece of equipment, they told me I was thinking too big, and that they didn't think that the young people in the Black community would benefit from this equipment.
Mm.
Well, of course, I argued with them and talked real crazy to them, and because it was my money. You can't tell me how to spend my money.
That's crazy.
So while the pandemic was going on, I signed all the papers and sent the stuff up. So by the time they turned around, they were bringing the shipping container and putting it on my property. It wasn't like I was going to allow them to say, oh, no, you got to send it back. So in that instance, sometimes, and I'm going to say this straight out, when a Black organization reaches, it's always a
Then they're
question of
threatened by you.
whether.
Yeah,
Well, then they're threatened by you.
yeah.
Okay.
That's a whole other dynamic, right? It's a kind of racism. There are, or
It
bigotry.
is.
You're a Black woman,
Mhm.
and they are pigeonholing you into a certain category and saying, wow, you're supposed to be this smaller version of yourself.
Mhm.
Why are you thinking so ambitiously? And
Right.
the
And
answer
one of them
there-
said that is too ambitious for your community.
I don't think they would say that to you if you were a white man.
Oh,
No.
no. They wouldn't even say it like that if I was a white woman.
That's
The
the kind
color-
of situation where
That's sad.
I would actually, I wonder, how would I call that out? I would tell
Well,
them that that's small.
I called them out by doing it.
Yeah.
I did it in spite of that. It was my money. It wasn't for them to tell me how to spend my
Yeah.
money. So I signed off on everything. They were at home. Zoom hadn't really been in effect yet like it is now.
Mhm.
And I sent it.
Yeah.
But the crazy part is now they say how innovative it was
Well, they'll
that we
always
put
take,
this on.
they'll always take credit afterwards when it works.
Okay.
You know, Allegheny County
Yeah.
Health Department refused to help us shut down Shenango. After we shut down Shenango against their will, they proudly published a paper a year later saying how much the health of the community is better now. As
Yeah,
if
I know,
they-
I read it.
And they were absolutely refusing along the way to help us. We had to go straight to the EPA. So no, everybody who stands in your way and creates headwinds against you,
Okay.
they'll be your best friend when you succeed. Because they wanna embrace success. They want it to rub off on themselves. That's reality, the cold reality.
Okay.
I'd love to hear from everybody else on the call about your thoughts about proposals, whether any of this resonates or you disagree with some parts of this. What's worked for you in the past?
I have a question.
Yeah,
I just don't know how we can rephrase of what we're doing according to the farm language of writing the proposal to better make it like this.
you don't know how to get there.
Yeah,
Is it the ideas that are hard or just actual writing?
the actual writing.
So for the ideas have to come from you. The actual writing is an interesting question. I think it can be incredibly valuable to work with people who are in writing programs, like the English honors program here at Carnegie Mellon. And I would be really interested to see if we could find students who are in English writing honors or English PhD program who are willing to donate their time to help you create really powerful language. There's a whole program field called rhetoric. That people get a PhD in rhetoric. And rhetoric is literally about how do you write in a way to be convincing. It's about being convincing. The people who take that program, some of them go and become really well paid as advertising executives, marketing people in big companies. So they turn their ability to convince people into politics or buying, Downy laundry, whatever, so it's detergent. So, but they're very good at being convincing, and language matters a lot. So I actually would be very happy for us at Center for Shared Prosperity to try and connect you in your proposal writing efforts with students here and see if we can find students who want to help co-write with you. I think it'd be a great experience for them as students. So just email Marlene and me, and I'll reach out to the head of the rhetoric program, Marlene, with you, and we'll say, hey, here's an idea. Once we know how many we need, then we can reach out and figure out if we get some volunteers. The other thing that you can do, I'll just say it right out there, write a draft and then send it to me and ask me for comments. I mean, this is what I do hundreds of times every month. So I'll quickly read it and write comments all over it about what I think is powerful and where it needs help. So I'm always happy to be a reader for you on any proposals you're writing anywhere. I've done this for 26 years, so yeah. Other thoughts about proposals? Thank you, Abdelkadir.
I think Vanessa.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was scratching my head.
Oh.
Well, what do you think so far? Now that you're scratching your head.
Oh. Yeah, definitely when you're talking about the trustees resonated with me, just with my own personal experience. Not with Samson, they're pretty great, and everyone here knows the board. I have other clients that when I go to board meetings, I'm on the defense, like my hands are up, and I'm there to defend grantees. And that's not like the best way to communicate. That's not the best way to share information.
Any other questions at all about proposals and writing them?
I just wanted to comment that it seems somewhat a little bit familiar as I think about my business plan proposal on my for-profit side, and where I did receive some guidance, a lot of guidance on it. And as I look through some of the things you've been speaking on, I was just kind of looking at to see if I had like some of the components just on that side, and it makes sense, some of the language and things that you were saying, but it also made me think about like on our nonprofit side where we, lack and could use some guidance, and, so very interesting.
That's actually a good point. Business school folks are pretty good at this stuff. Like when you write an excellent executive summary for a big business plan, you're doing the same thing. You're convincing people. And so that's a really good point too. Okay, so that's our proposal section for our meeting today. Then we want to talk a little bit about contracts and budgets. I have less to say there than about proposals, but that's fine. We have less time left. Let me go down to that. So, first of all, most important thing for a budget that any proposal, any foundation cares about is the span of calendar time. Like what's the start date? What's the end date? You want to be clever with the end date. So a month before the actual end date, the foundation will start asking you for some kind of report. And so it's very useful to make the end date well after you're actually going to finish the work. So you can write the report after you've done the work, instead of writing the report a month early and not really having your final results yet. But the other side of that cleverness is you want to reel the foundation in for second year funding. If their board meeting is in, let's say, June, that's the trustee meeting they're presenting your thing at, then they're probably asking for your proposal in about March. Because by April and May, the program officers have to have their casebook ready, which is all the proposals they're taking to the trustees in June. So they're going to tell you it's due March. So you're giving them the proposal in March, but they're not voting on it until June. So you better make your start date after June, like July.
Hmm.
But if you make your end date end of August to the year after, 13 months later, then there's no way you can get money for them next June to continue the project for a second year. Because most foundations will not fund you again for the same project before the end date of the first year. So that gets tricky.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of look at their calendar. Maybe they have a meeting in September, right? So you say, okay, I'm gonna get money this year in June, but I'm gonna shoot for getting a second year of money from them in September next year. If that's the case, then you got to make sure your project end date is before September. And then a month before that, you're gonna be able to send the program officer your, report. It has to be that the program officer gets that report early enough that it's before the deadline for the proposals for the September meeting. That was confusing, I'm sorry. But you want to talk to the program officer about when are the trustee meetings and when are the deadlines for you as a program officer. And you want to take those two and kind of step back and look at them and think about what that means for the way you calendar yourself. So that's a major thing that you can only negotiate by talking to the program officer to figure out what their rules are. Some foundations have weird other rules. Google does this. They'll fund you for 2 years and then not again for at least 2 years.
Why?
So you can get 2 years of funding and then you can't get funding. And then 2 years later, you can start again. Grable will never fund your second year until you've used up all the money in your first year. So if your project's going really well, you want to get money early, you can from Grable, but you have to use up all the money first to show that you've actually spent it all. Then you can get more money. So every foundation has its own weirdnesses around that. But there's nothing wrong with actually talking to the program officer and saying, I want to plan our calendar correctly. Let's talk about your rules for second year funding. I know you can't promise that right now, but let's work through that so when I write this proposal, I time it correctly.
Baby.
And that just shows them that you're really organized, right? It's like, oh, wow, you're really watching out for your organization. The other major budget thing to think about is, of course, labor. Usually the biggest cost of any of these projects is labor. The thinking about the number of full-time equivalents of work that are going to get done, and therefore how much money we need for labor. Go ahead. And then when we're doing budgets at Carnegie Mellon with community organizations, we think about them in two different ways. We think about what's the equipment we need to buy at Carnegie Mellon, what's the labor lines we need for people here to be part of the effort, and then for the community organization, what do they need to buy in terms of equipment that's long lasting? What's the consumable costs, like if you're buying food for people, and what's the labor costs? One thing that foundations generally are looking for, if your proposal says we're going to do this great work and we need this consumables money, like we're going to help people refinance their homes with better rates, and we're going to do all this work and we just need this money for transportation reimbursement. They're going to look at that and say, well, you're all full-time already. You're just going to add this and we're just paying for transportation? No, that doesn't work. You need more capacity. They're always thinking about capacity. So think about the additional work you're proposing to do, and then you got to build into the budget additional money because you're going to make somebody who's part-time full-time, or because you're going to bring in more full-timers or more part-timers. But it's a big red flag for a foundation if you make a proposal that suggests that we're doing something extra and awesome, and you have all the staff you need already. It's like, well, no, if you have all the staff you need already for what you're doing now, you need more staff. You can't do that. It just doesn't work. When we
I
got
have
the
a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Okay, and this happened to us. This just happened to us. On our shelter, we had our whole budget together, but we had some additional labor and equipment costs that we didn't foresee. and wasn't written into the budget. How do we cover ourselves in a situation like that? I mean, we were
Something-
funded, we got all the funding, but it
Yeah.
wasn't enough.
Something that I used to do, and Carnegie Mellon doesn't allow me to do it anymore, but up until 10 years ago, I always did it. And I learned this because there was a gentleman at the Carnegie Science Center named Dennis Bateman, and he started working for me at the Create Lab. And apparently the Science Center always does this in their budgets, and I never knew about it. And the foundations were fine with it. They were totally fine with it. Whenever he makes a budget, you're not going to believe this, Mama Yana. He makes the budget, and then the last row of the budget, it says 12% contingency,
Mhm.
and it adds another 12%. So he's got the budget, but then he's adding an extra 12% of cushion. And apparently foundations are okay with this. And what it means is we're not sure that we've got all our costs laid out. We're doing our best shot, but we need you to give us 12% extra because just in case.
Okay,
I thought that was great. And I wish I could still do that. And CMU up until 10 years ago let me do that. It was very useful because you're right. We don't know everything ahead of time. But yeah, CMU doesn't let me do that anymore now.
but we can do that?
I would try.
Okay.
And you can tell the
12%
program
cushion.
officer, you can tell the program officer,
Yeah.
Gila suggested we add a contingency because we're never gonna know everything ahead of time. Is that fine with you guys?
Okay,
But Carnegie Science Center certainly does that on all their budgets, and I'm sure they apply to all the foundations locally all the time.
Super.
But yeah, I was really surprised to see that, and it's a great idea. Anybody here use contingency like that in their budgets? No? Okay. Yeah, I think it's different. Do you see that? Do you see that, Vanessa, when you see budgets? Is there
I
a
see
contingency?
more, like, I see indirect costs,
Sure.
Mm.
too, maybe like a
Sure.
10%, which is like the office space, the benefits, things like that.
Operation,
Operations, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, our indirect costs are hard here. I'll just give you some of the ugly inner workings here. Depending on who I apply to for money, Carnegie Mellon charges between 18% and 67% indirect costs on top of my budget.
67%.
So what happens is I go after like $100,000 grant from somebody like Mellon Foundation or Intel Corporation, and I only get $60,000 to spend. They take the rest out of the budget at the university to pay for my, well, I don't know what, internet, telephone? Because they don't pay for my salary. I have to bring in all the money for my salary, they don't pay for that. They don't pay for Marlene's salary. We have to bring that in.
Yeah.
But I guess we get to use their good name. So, yeah.
That's hard to take it.
But yeah, the idea behind contingency is it's not indirect in the sense that it doesn't vaporize away. You get to actually use it for something.
Mhm.
But it's language that it appears to me that people understand. So it's useful. So this is when you're thinking about budget, you don't want red flags. You don't want the program officer to look at it and decide you're not asking for enough money. You're not building capacity. You don't want that to happen. Now, one of the things that you should all just be aware of is that when you're making an ask of a foundation, often there's this game. You'd like to ask, Bobby's going to fund you. Like, hey, Bobby, how much money can you give me? And Bobby says, well, how much do you need?
Mhm.
And now you're stuck in this weird loop. You're trying to make a budget that they can afford. They won't tell you how much they can afford. And you're kind of stuck. So one way to deal with that I've done in the past is before I make a proper proposal, if it's clear that Bobby's interested in the thing, I'll say, well, let me make you a menu of 3 different amounts. I always do 3 because they choose the middle one. And what I'll say is, if you can give me 45 grand, I can do this feasibility study on how to deal with the fact that the funding is getting reduced by $95 and the SNAP benefits. If you give me this 75 grand, I'm actually going to pilot it. with 500 families. But for 140 grand, I could really do a whole city rollout. What do you want? And if you can present 3 options to them, they'll usually not pick the smallest. They'll pick the middle or the top. And it's a nice way to get something back from them. Because the weird thing about these foundations is the same foundation that you can struggle as a small community organization to get $22,000 from, that same foundation is negotiating with Carnegie Mellon to give them $280,000. It's incredibly frustrating. And it's not just because Carnegie Mellon is large. It's because Carnegie Mellon asks for a bunch of money. And the smaller community organization doesn't bother to do so because they don't realize how much headroom there is to ask for more money.
Yeah.
And so it's the program officers don't try and resolve this. They don't tell you, by the way, you could have asked for 3 times more. Like, I don't know, being like negotiating for a car, right? If you offered 8,000 for that old Mini Cooper and the person says yes, they don't say, if you'd offered me 7,000, I would have sold it to you too. They never tell you that. So the program officer doesn't do that either. Giving them a few options gets you a little bit of feedback early in the process before you bother writing the whole thing. But they have to see that there's a trade-off. They have to see that when they give you less money, they get less. They get less work done. So that has to be really obvious to them. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted you to just be aware of. Another really important thing that I'll do with foundations is if I'm asking a foundation for money for some kind of program, I'll ask them, what are 3 examples of similar programs you funded in the past? I'd like to talk to some of your grantees. Then they're really impressed, like, oh my God, you're doing due diligence on us? Like, you want to talk to our grantees to figure out what kind of foundation we are? Okay, you're serious. But then that also gives me the room to say, by the way, how much did you give each grantee? Now for foundations, that's public information. They can't withhold that. But now you right away are getting intelligence from them about the kind of amounts of money that they're thinking about for you. Like what category of this thought of you at? Right?
That's smart.
But asking to talk to their grantees is an incredibly powerful way to show that you're really serious. Any other thoughts, questions on this one? All right. Sorry, we're doing a lot today. It's a lot of material. That happens every time, I guess. This is killing me. Our screen here just keeps going black. It's just miserable. This is a slide that's mostly for Center for Shared Prosperity, but I wanted you to kind of get a sense of it anyway. If you write budgets in which you're hoping to have a Pitt student or a Carnegie Mellon student engage and work with you, for example, for whatever the project is, these are guidelines. Again, it's on the drive for you to just know. It's about $15 an hour minimum to pay students based on fair wage practices of what we pay students here. And in the summer, it's something between 3 and 5 grand to have a summer full-time student intern. For staff at Carnegie Mellon who can do things like make a website for you or run a survey and do an analysis for you, it's about $40 an hour, which is the equivalent of like what, $20,000 a year job, I guess. Getting that backwards, $80,000 a year job. Faculty is really hard. Getting faculty's attention at CMU is difficult because they're trying to find money for their salary and money for each of their students. Each doctoral student that I have to find $80,000 a year just to pay their tuition and their $3,000 a month stipend. Let me say that again.
Golly.
Every single student I have to find $80,000 a year for them to pay CMU, right? So I have to go outside and find money, not that I get rich, but to pay CMU so that I can have the students. This is like the broken ass nature of the higher education system. But because of that, without a couple of tens of thousands of dollars, it's impossible to get a faculty member's attention because they're too busy being stressed out about finding money. So that's a general problem. So yeah, working with faculty is expensive. It's really, really expensive. But if you do work with faculty and a foundation wants you to do that, add it to your bottom line, right? Don't let it take away from the money you're getting. Make the budget big. It's the only way to do that. Any questions about this slide?
Yes, the summer, how long, what is that, the length of
3
it when you
months.
say the summer? 3
That is
months?
3 months. And one cool thing, any student that you get to work all summer long with you, like let's say you're doing an agriculture program and you get some students to help with the website or something in the summer. If they are people that you love in the summer and they're doing awesome work, they can continue working in the fall, either for money and $15 an hour part-time. And it's really easy to hire people during the year. Or if they want units, if they need like 120 units to graduate, I can give them units to keep working with you. And that's free, doesn't cost a thing. And then they get units that they need for graduation. The big rule at CMU is no student can simultaneously get money and units for the same work. They got to get one or the other.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's a nice thing because you can work with a student intern in the summer. You can work with 3 interns. And if one of them is awesome, you can say, hey, if you want, Professor Ela Norbash can give you units to keep working with you next fall. Do you want to do that? And if they say yes, they can keep working with you for as many hours a week as they want. And they'll get compensated in the units that they need for graduation. It's just considered real world experiences. So that's a really nice thing about students. For staff, we're also creating structures in the Center for Shared Prosperity so staff can do community engagement projects. And we get explicit permission from their supervisors for them to do that. That's powerful because we have staff here that do everything from budgeting to contract writing to websites, technology, you know, all that good stuff. 3D printing. Okay. We are down to our last bit of time. I wanted to talk about service agreements because that's one of the ways that we at Carnegie Mellon give money out to organizations. And some of you are involved in these or your friends are involved in these because we've already done, I don't know, probably a dozen now. Probably done a dozen service agreements now out of the center. But this is how they work. We figure out the dates. So for instance, let's say we are giving money to Trying Together to do some early childhood education work in Stowe Rocks. True story. So we have to figure out what's the first year look like in terms of calendar. And then scope is just a paragraph of what they're going to do. The less, the better, because it's easier to not kind of have anybody here with a fine-toothed comb ask about what we're doing exactly. And then budget is just how much money they need. And then Carnegie Mellon drafts a contract, a service agreement contract that says, Trying Together is going to do this work. Here's a paragraph about it. These are the dates. And here's how we're going to pay them. We're going to pay them half up front and half at the end. And then that agreement gets signed by Trying Together and signed by Carnegie Mellon. Then we have to get Trying Together in the vendor system for Carnegie Mellon, which can take a month. Because they have to become an approved vendor, we have to know their bank account information, the routing number, all that good stuff, their W-9, W-2, all that. Then we have to teach Trying Together how to invoice us properly. Like that first payment, they have to send us an invoice that has reference to the contract number, ask for the money, and then CMU will wire them the money to their bank account. And it could be monthly, it could be half at the beginning, half at the end. I do not do agreements in which you get all the money at the end because it's unfair to expect people to do the work before they have money. So I like to somehow do it progressively or send half at the beginning at least. But that's the process. What's important about service agreements in general, if you write proposals that include service agreements, is no matter who you're doing one with, assume it's going to take at least a month to just get through the contractual work. So in your calendaring process, when you decide I'm going to work with Trying Together, I'm getting money from Heinz, I'm going to work with them to educate early childhood centers around nutrition and food, you need to plan on a solid month after you get the proposal funded before trying together can even start working. But you're just figuring out how to get the service agreement in place to get them the money. If you don't do that and you expect them to start working on day one, you're going to be behind a month later because they will not have been able to start yet. So those are the kinds of delays that are just a little bit miserable. And even when the thing is signed after a month, when you send an invoice to an institution like Carnegie Mellon, it's 30 days net. So it's up to 30 days later that they pay you.
Yeah.
So now it's 2 months, right, before they get the first dollar.
Yeah.
So that's just something really to keep track of. I'm done. I'm gonna unplug this. It's actually giving me like fits. It's giving me a seizure. Okay, I give up on that screen. It's making me like
Yeah.
my muscles twitch. Oh. Any questions about service agreements? All right, you're an easy class today.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's fun when you're here in person because we have face contact. I had to go to Davos last week, the World Economic Forum meeting, and they had a whole multiverse thing that I had to do. So I spent an hour and a half in the multiverse, which is not even the multiverse. It's basically a big video game where they had heads of state and us all talking to each other. It's the lamest thing ever. It's worse because you're all cartoon figures, and because you have big headsets,
No.
you can't see facial expressions. So all you have is a cartoon face for each person. So there's no eye contact, there's no smiling, there's no lips. It's so bad. I feel so sorry for
Weird.
Facebook and Meta and all the other multiverse things going on. It's remarkably bad. So I'm still preferring real world and Zoom to the metaverse for what it's worth. I'm sorry, multiverse, metaverse. I don't even know what it's called.
I don't know.
I think
Did you go to the
multiverse is.
conference in person?
Say again?
Did you go to the conference in person?
Oh, yes. I've been in Switzerland for the last week. I just got back. So I'm in severe jet lag right now. So I've been up since 3 this morning.
So you
'Cause it's
were
a
in
6-hour
person, but they still made you go into the metaverse?
Isn't that awesome? Because they wanted to show us this amazing technology that McKinsey and World Economic Forum are developing, where they want all of us with heads of state and with CEOs of corporations to interact with each other during the year when we're not there in person. So yeah, it's pretty special. I'm going to be telling my class all about it later today because they're going to love to hear
Yeah.
how absurd things are going on over there. And then I have another section in here. One of the other things that foundations actually love to see is that you have a fair and balanced process for getting other work done. So let's say you're designing a food distribution process. I keep going back to the ideas you threw out, Mama Ayana, sorry. And as part of it, you want like a transportation service that's going to deliver food. And you're hoping that you can get a for-profit delivery service to provide the actual delivery on the ground. Writing in the proposal that you're going to do a call to find the best bid for that, foundations love to see that because they feel like you're taking seriously the need to decide fairly on who gets the money to provide the transportation service. And so I often will make sure that there's anything that I don't know how I'm going to do it, I call it out in the proposal and I say, we're going to do it. And here's the process we're going to use to figure out how to do it.
Vaguely, you don't need to say we're gonna
Right.
have only 2 participants, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
It's vague.
Clearly, yeah.
When you run it, the call has to have a bunch of things. You want to send out a document to people. This is after you get the proposal, right? That's giving them a context. Why is this something they should bother to apply for? How much work are they doing? What's the calendar? What's the range of money you have available for them to do it? Because if you only have $30,000 budgeted for transportation, you don't want some fancy organization bidding at $200,000. It's a waste of their time and it's a waste of your time. So I upfront will say, I've budgeted up to this much money for this. So I'll make it really clear that way. And then what are the basic requirements? And then you're asking them for a narrative. So these are actually you're asking them to do this one. Describe what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, what's your budget? And then you're explaining to them the criteria. How are we gonna decide who to give this funding to? And putting the criteria in the call is important because it shows that you're transparent and accountable. Instead of, what often happens with these calls is, you want to give the money to Bob,
Mhm.
and somebody does a call and gets 15 proposals in, then you give the money to Bob. And then everybody says, yeah, see, they already knew who they were giving the money to. Bob's their cousin. So you want to be really clear what the criteria are so that people don't accuse you
Yeah,
of already knowing the result at the beginning of the game.
it's that transparency that's important.
Yeah, it's establishing trust with the community. But yeah, they have to provide the narrative. But yeah, those kinds of unknowns in a proposal are 100% fine. Even being able to say in a proposal, we're going to have these qualitative metrics. We hope to establish 3 quantitative metrics. We don't know what they are,
Yeah.
but you know what we're going to do? We're going to budget time to spend with Kevin Crowley at LRDC in Pitt, and we're going to co-design metrics with him that are established already, legitimized in the community. If they see that language, that's great. They don't need to know what the metrics are ahead of time. They just want to know that you have a pathway for being able to figure them out, and that you budgeted time and money for that. So that's very powerful, actually. Again, it shows that you're tapping into local expertise in some way.
I like how the scope and the calendar are separated, because sometimes when I think of scope and calendar, it's one.
Right.
But defining it there, it's 2 different things. Well, it's 2 things.
Right.
Or can we get a copy of this whole presentation that you have?
Yeah, this whole thing is in the Google Drive
That was shared.
directory, and we can reshare it, but it's the
Oh,
same
okay,
exact
cool.
directory still. I even put the
Okay.
I even put the Center for Shared Prosperity proposal in there too, so you got that. And like,
Okay.
when we do our 3rd class, those slides will be in the same directory too.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
It'll just be like a living archive. I don't know where the video went from the 1st class, but I'm sure Jay put it somewhere, and we'll put this video in the same place and let you know when this video goes up. Because then you can share that with whoever you want to. I hope I haven't said
Okay.
anything embarrassing in this video. We'll find out. That's it, friends. Any thoughts, reflections? What are our topics, Marlene, next time? Let's find that out and see if you all are good with that topic.
Next time
Uh,
we have.
Go ahead.
And I was gonna say, like, as overwhelming as all this has been, I feel like it's really, really, really great. I've learned a lot. And I mean, I guess because it's recorded, it's like, well,
Yeah.
how realistically can we go back and look at all of this? I mean,
Right.
it's recorded, but for like those of us who would love to connect, like you said, should we just send you something,
Sure.
directly, and just maybe have like some one-on-one, just, backing things up? I mean, I probably have an explosive amount of questions that I don't need to get into now, but yeah, it's been really great for me.
That's fantastic. I'll warn you all one thing, which is I'm scheduled about 2 weeks out all the time. Like, I have a 2-week out schedule. So the worst thing in the world to do is contact me and say, this proposal's due day after tomorrow. Can we talk? So contact me at least 2 weeks before the proposal is due, so that we have time to read it and talk. Always. And the more the better, right? If it's 2 months away, that's much better than 2 weeks out.
Do you recommend like any kind of like shell, like having like some things already in place?
If you write a successful proposal that has like a really good half paragraph on the vision for your organization, totally reuse it. But I guess I'm a big fan of freshness. Every time I write something about the center, I start over because it comes out in a new way that's more colored by what's happened recently. So I don't reuse much because I think it gets stale. I'm always worried that if you reuse stuff, copy and paste a lot, you lose a sense of passion about it. But that's just me. I don't know.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of somewhat contrary to, some information you get from other like people like grant writers or different, it's always like, oh, create a shell, you got this shell, as long as you have a shell, you're good. And it's like,
Grant writers don't work. It just does. I've tried it. There's grant writers that get like a 5% cut of every grant they write for you that gets funded. I have never had a single grant writer for the Create Lab in 27 years succeed because they're not you. They don't have your passion. I
agree.
I have not had them once succeed.
That's our next
I agree.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that when you do that cut and paste thing,
Yeah.
that doesn't show any growth in your organization to me.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I can cut and paste from something I wrote 2 years ago,
Yeah.
that doesn't show any growth in Sankofa.
Yeah.
We
And-
haven't done anything new.
That's what I was talking about.
And everything changes, right? Everything's dynamic.
Right,
We're always
right.
changing. And we don't recognize that when we cut and paste.
A lot.
Yeah, that's right. And for the same reasons, don't use ChatGPT. Don't go and tell ChatGPT to generate you 2 paragraphs on the food crisis in America. Because everything that the ChatGPT AI system creates for you is just based on the historical information in the internet. It's not based on your lived experience and what's happening in your neighborhood
Yeah.
ever. And it's not new. It uses old information, so it's always stale. And it looks good. You skim it once, it looks good, but you can always do much better. I'm annoyed. I already have one student who just used ChatGPT to write their answers to my ethics questions for today.
No.
And it's obvious. I read it and it's obvious. It's like, oh my gosh, now I have to go have a long, hard talk, but that's not the same as writing something from the heart.
No.
So yeah, those systems don't work. And it's funny, grant writers are kind of the same thing, right? They need to reuse, like consultants, like McKinsey consultants. They have to reuse what they do constantly because they're on the books, they're trying to make money, they're trying to do 5 jobs at the same time. I've seen the same consultant agency in California that comes in and does strategic planning for Heinz, Mellon, Benedum, Grable, Buell. The same consultancy. I don't know how much money they hire these people to come in. And I'm always interviewed by them. And they have the same blasted slides. They're just recycling the same stuff. And it's a joke. It's like they say you need better metric MEL plans, and here's how to do it. It's like you're just telling everybody they need better metric MEL plans. It's like if I had a slide set on how to drive and I gave you all the same slide sets saying you need to look over your right shoulder better. I haven't even watched you drive, and I'm just telling you to look over your right shoulder better. It's completely not customized. It's completely not based on your actual reality. And that's what consulting is about. It's about how many times can I sell the same thing and make profit. So I'm sorry I'm so cynical about it, but it's my experience. So yeah, I don't like grant writers very much. But an English student here who gets to know your organization and falls in love with your organization and helps you create really powerful language, that's not a grant writer. That's an English student who's working with you side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and maybe developing a longer term relationship where they keep working with you. That to me is very exciting and powerful. Okay. Marlene says the next topic we have is grant writing.
Yes.
So we'll have to think about that again and maybe knock heads and not knock heads, but we'll decide what to do for next time around because we did a lot of grant writing this time around.
Yeah.
One possibility is to jump to the next topic after that. Another top possibility would be to do workshopping next time, where we take like a couple of your grant ideas and workshop them with you on this together. So that could be pretty fun. If any of you, when is our next meeting, Marlene?
February 28th.
So if between now and February 28th, you think about it and you have something you're actually working on, I would love to have us workshop it together because then you can kind of see how this goes on a very real project. That could be fun. Just contact Marlene if you have something like that and you're willing to kind of share it openly where we all talk about it. I think that would be a pretty good learning process.
Say it again. What was it?
If you have a proposal you're going to be working on between now and February 28th, that we can look at on February 28th and actually work on in class. And we can make it, make improvements in real time to something. And everybody will learn from that process. That would be pretty cool.
Well, that's gonna be a big one on my side. It's a federal, so
When is that one due?
March 23rd.
Will you have made enough progress on it by February 28th to share? Okay, so then there's an option right there. Yeah, everybody else think about it too. We could probably do 2 of them in the class, something like that. All right, I have to run to my next thing. This is Tuesday, so have a good rest of the week, everybody. And Marlene, we'll remind you what the link is to this Google Drive. So you
Yeah.
have access to all this.
I'll send out with the meeting minutes.
All right, we'll stop recording now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.